I don't know if you caught the end of that report from our colleague Phil LeBeau, not only, of course, reporting on Mary Barra's appearance in front of you and your colleagues, but also the fact that Fiat Chrysler is building a new plant. Is Fiat Chrysler setting an example and sort of shaming GM, as it were?
You know, I think this is complicated times. And yes, obviously, all of us, not just in Michigan, but in the United States, are glad to hear that we're building a plant here in the United States and that we're going to be creating jobs here and keeping jobs here. I think that, you know, this is a very complicated time, and I probably understand it probably better than almost any member of Congress. I come out of the auto industry. This is an industry that's a cyclical industry. I can remember when we thought 14 or 15 million sales were, well, we went as high as 18 million. We're still at 17 million. And it is an industry that is in transformation. I think what we're all concerned about is we are not competing on a level playing field. General Motors has made a decision, has a significant amount of production in Mexico, 80% of which is being shipped to this country. And the question is, how do we support GM? How do we keep those jobs here in this country? How do we make sure we're staying at the forefront of innovation and technology? And it's complicated.
Yeah, Congresswoman, you mentioned that you probably know this, you know, the situation and sort of the stakes of this discussion right now better than anyone. I believe you used to work at GM 30 years there. Yeah, in terms of answering those questions, how do you bring those jobs and retain those jobs here and have a company like GM continue to be competitive into the future? Your meeting just now, did you get any answers from Mary Barra in terms of how that'll happen and what that would look like?
So I think it was a very complicated discussion. I think a lot of us are concerned. I am. I mean, I will be very blunt about the decision to put the Blazer in Mexico, that it's close to 800,000 units that are being produced. Just General Motors alone, I think it's 796 a year that are being produced in Mexico, 80% of which is coming back to the United States. So, you know, and the fact of the matter is we're not playing on a level playing field. Those low-paying jobs in Mexico were created by a very bad NAFTA deal 25 years ago. What do we do about trade policy? What is the right trade policy? How do we level the playing field? You know, we're all concerned about, I still call it NAFTA 2.0. What is this new deal? Is it going to hurt or help? Talking to everybody. I think the meeting today, there was a lot of emotion. Many people were blindsided, including myself. And the industry's not together. It's another problem that this industry is not a united industry, which makes it really hard to figure out what the right public policy is to support these companies and keep the jobs here.
Congresswoman, should Mary Barra be making decisions purely with the interests of her shareholders in mind, or does GM, more than most companies in the US, have a greater duty to the American worker and the American economy because of the bailouts it's received in the past?
So I think this is a larger question, period. I think that there was a time in America where corporations shared. They did care about their workers. It wasn't all about the bottom line. It is, yes, we've got to be competitive, but how do you make sure that the workers are part of that? And I think in recent years you're seeing this in all of these different companies. I'll tell you something, you know, look, I want to work with Mary. I want to keep jobs here. I don't want to see more jobs go someplace else. But the same day that Ford or General Motors made that announcement, Ford told me they were pulling a shift out of the Flat Rock plant in my district. But they handled it differently. All the people at that plant are going to hopefully find jobs, and they made the same announcement. They were pulling a shift out in Kentucky the same day, that they were going to try to relocate those employees to another plant. There was more of a compassionate perspective, and I think that perhaps GM didn't do a great job at communicating what they were doing with their employees. But look, this is complicated stuff, but the employees, working men and women, deserve to be treated with respect, and an important part of all of these corporations' decisions, and I think too much so, they're not anymore.